Okay, thank you so much for inviting us. We are Andy and Helen. We are the Cyber Show.
So it's the Cyber Show. We're a British podcast. Don't have many British podcasts that are out there that are independent, essentially, and we're one of them. We do go to internationally as well. So this is us actually in Florida speaking to another British company who are out there as well. What is a podcast? It's essentially a mix between academia and journalism. So it's a little bit up from journalism with a little bit more research. We're 2 years old and we have about 10,000 active listeners every single month, and we are both the presenters. So we write everything, we film everything. We actually do the entire production from start to finish all by ourselves. Yeah, so we only have a crew maximum of about 4 at the moment, and we manage to do everything ourselves due to technology, really.
And that includes running a web server and our distribution infrastructure and so on. So there's quite a lot to it. Okay, so these are our objectives. To educate the public about computer science and about cybersecurity, about digital rights, and the place that we have within society in relation to technology. And that's something that's becoming increasingly important all of the time, because I think that essentially the human race has made that decision to become a technological society. And to become a technological society means that you have to be a participant in technology. You can no longer ignore it. It's not somebody else's problem. So a lot of our work is around exposing technological abuse, how technology is used to manipulate, disenfranchise, exploit, and so on, to promote equal opportunities in tech, sustainability in technology. That's a very important topic. Energy comes into the equation. And also e-waste. We'll talk a little bit about that today. To promote civic cybersecurity, and I'm going to define that. Helen will explain a little bit more about some new words that you'll hear today. Civic cybersecurity, digital self-defense, and the fight against techno-fascism, which is a specific form of fascism which leverages technology, specifically digital communications technology. And to highlight, and also we have a particularly British angle on this. We are, I guess, although people would say it's the last refuge of a scoundrel, fairly patriotic. We love Britain. We love where we are. Maybe not everything that we've ever done as an empire, but we think there's an enormous amount of things to value about Britain and British values.
And who invented computers?
Who invented computers? That's right. What happened at Bletchley Park? What happened at Manchester with the Mark I? You ask these questions. This is the home not just of the Industrial Revolution, for all that it's done, but of digital technology and computers. And we should remember that when we take a stance on digital technology in the world. So we are also very, very passionately interested in the concepts of national security and what that really means, to the extent that it really needs redefining, and we redefine national security as the sum total of the earned securities of every individual citizen, and not just, as we were talking about earlier, the lords and masters and big business. There's much more to it than that. Okay.
So why are we here today? Well, we do quite a lot of work with the arts. We actually work with a number of artists who work also in the technological space. So we have a lot of the music that you'll listen to in video games and film will be AI generated. That's someone programming that into a computer. Personally, it's not the machine doing it. But what we're finding is that arts have always been a key developer of the technological space. So they will often take technology that's on the forefront and start using that in performances as a testing bed before it's rolled out to others. And actually a lot of performers will do that off their own back and create a lot of those initial codes and programs. So we do think it's really important that if we're going to cover technology, we cover all areas where technology is used. So when it comes to do an arts festival, it makes sense that technology and safety of technology use is here as well.
Local community is a very important thing. lots of the solutions to the problems that we face in the technological age are going to be solved bottom up and not top down. And that means that they start with grassroots, they start with small, diverse, little communities solving those problems using freely available software and resources and building the future that we want to see. So it's really nice to be an event like this because these are the seeds of something much more important in the future. Okay, we began, well actually there's many routes to what we're doing. Some of this started in about 2010 with what we call crypto parties in London, where we were teaching arts hackers and people to maintain their privacy, online security, digital dignity, to be able to have mastery over their equipment and their own stuff. But also later on, as an add-on to women's self-defense groups, a suggestion came up that so much abuse is perpetrated through phones and things like that, stalking, psychological abuse, and so on. That it's a really good idea to start actually within that digital space and forewarn and forearm people, especially vulnerable women, to be able to defend themselves in that way.
And you were about 10 years, I think, ahead of National Government and Police, who have only just started to really open that up, and we only spoke to them very recently. And even they are potentially going through funding issues, even though all the crime that used to happen potentially towards women personally is now mostly happening in that digital space. But the prosecutions and the arrests are not keeping up with the change in those crimes either. So we have to really educate those victims before they become victims, because they may not get the justice that they deserve and rightfully should have, because the talent to understand the crime is, quite frankly, not there.
We speak to a lot of prominent thinkers in this area, experts, CEOs, people in law enforcement, people working in intelligence, and people working in psychology and social sciences and things. We see all kinds of interesting new developments, like the idea of spouseware and bossware, which is surveillance software and surveillance technology which is directed at your own family or your own employees. So it's very involuted. Many of the digital weapons that we develop as hackers, which are directed outwards at a known enemy, are now being taken and directed inwards at our own society and our members of our loved ones. And so this is a colossal issues of mistrust and different psychological harms that are happening.
And I guess it's really difficult to work in this industry either as an engineer or as an academic without someone asking you if they can either spy on their employees or spy on someone they know or their girlfriend. And that's a very common thing. It happens every year. Someone will come out, they don't really ask me, but they will ask a male, how do I spy on my girlfriend? It might not even be their girlfriend. We don't know what they're asking. And it's not met with some nice kind words, to be honest.
There are so many bizarre ethical issues that come up for us as cybersecurity people teaching cybersecurity. I've been a visiting professor of computer science for 30 or more years. I've moved into from signal processors into teaching cybersecurity, and when that happened, immediately I was faced with the very obvious fact that the university is recruiting cyber criminals from overseas who are coming to us to learn how to then scam British people. And the ethical objections that I raised to that were just dismissed. So, and this is grist for the mill. This is common now. We know, like say for example, Cambridge University, which we visited recently, mostly has Chinese students. Now, most of those are perfectly sincere, honourable citizens with good intentions. They're doing good stuff, but there are so many conflicts of interest. For example, when we are bringing over, for example, Nigerian students, we know very well that Nigeria is an absolute centre of online scamming.
One of the biggest cartels in the world for that come from Nigeria, and the checks that are in place because of the way that their documentation's done, a lot of it's on paper, can very easily be forged. So although our government's done the correct checks, it's not very easy to actually make sure those checks have gone through. It's the same with China. If they want fake documents, their government issue them. So it makes it very difficult, so that we have these checks in place to stop essentially bad people taking up bad courses, but they are able to falsify that from the very beginning. So even when we flag it,
we just get shut down because it's very controversial to raise these kinds of, but they're absolutely, very, very important issues of our age. So this is kind of where we're situated, where cybersecurity meets social security, psychological security, digital and human rights.
I think most people get confused with cybersecurity and they think it's all about hardcore technology, but actually cybersecurity is the study of everything that happens on the internet. Huge amount of stuff these days.
And off the internet, on gadgets that may not even be network connected. So things that you have in your home, they can be treacherous. Let's talk about classical cybersecurity. This is what most people understand. It's a military metaphor of a perimeter. The bad guys are on the outside, the good guys are on the inside, and there are various pieces of malware that could attack us. Worms, Trojans, viruses, and so on. And we're all taught, not to click on this and not to click on that, and to be wary about what comes in and out of your devices.
At work. We don't talk about it at home, because that's when your boss doesn't have to worry about it, but we'll talk about why those things might be connected in a bit, I guess.
Yeah. In this model, the attack is against the system itself, so it's an attack on the device, on software and hardware. What we're going to say is that this is a very, very limited view of it. What's it really about? Us people, what we call layer 8. And so it's about the digital harms, more broadly toxic tech, and as lawyers would say, that the harms are done against the person.
Or group of people.
Or group, or organisation. To steal, to spy, to influence, to disempower, gaslight, misinform, distract, sap, and terrorise. Sapping is, as in PSYOPs, sapping is a particular project against an enemy, which is to reduce their morale, or to demotivate them.
Or to cause polarisation across groups as well, which we see. Conquer and divide, divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer, splitting up, sowing discord and so on. So defence that we're thinking about in this realm of cybersecurity is no longer just technical, but you might call it intellectual self-defence. So what kind of things would we call intellectual self-defence?
Common sense.
Common sense.
That's the way I look at it. It's common sense, and it's bringing those people skills back. When we go on a computer or a device, we're instantly thinking, well, I'm on a tablet or I'm on a computer. It's a technological thing. But your biggest worry or your biggest risk is actually being tricked. A standard con man trick, a psychological trick that will get you to either compromise your device or your data. And that's how almost around 90% of all attacks take place, is that you're actually psychologically tricked. Because it's a lot easier to trick you than it is the computer, because that's binary, that's yes or no, it's on or off. You are all different colours of the rainbow, and it's by getting to your emotions, making you panic, making you happy, elated, sad, that is how you are going to make those mistakes and lose control of your money and data.
So a large amount of psychology, how to spot cons, how to form a good argument as well. So this is political skills. Many people are not schooled in rhetoric or logic or argument. They're not able to form a cogent, coherent argument against a patently absurd shutdown. This kind of intellectual self-defense, we want to teach this to children. Children should grow up knowing how to spot a rotten argument and knock it down easily. Not, only because they went to Oxford or Cambridge and studied philosophy. What we also note is that these kind of harms against the person spread out. They ultimately are harms against society, against democracy, and because of the situation that we're in vis-a-vis technology and the environment, that they're ultimately a harm to the planet and all of us. So what role does bad software play in e-waste? This is an ecological question that we're often asked to talk about.
Yeah, I want to have a little chat about this one. So I've been working in IT for the last few years before I did this. And back in 3-4 years ago, we were already buying in brand new computers to deal with the Windows 10 absolvents. So we're talking 4 or 5 years of your budget, the majority of which was going to buy new hardware that you physically do not need. Your hardware that you've already got in your offices are already overpowered. You don't need to upgrade them, but you're forced to upgrade them for your security. But in the process of going towards that with your budget, your security is now at risk because you've had to now decrease the budget that you had for your security. So this is where we're in this sort of cycle. And what we're now seeing this year is that 90% of all computers around the world used in industry will be in a landfill by the end of this year. That's plastic, poisonous metals. They all need to be recreated, reshipped and brought back in. 90% of all the computers in the world. And there are more than one computer each for every person on this planet. So yes, most of us will probably have 3 or 4 devices in a home. Your children are expected, my children are expected to have 2 different devices and a mobile phone. So they will need to have a Google device for their schoolwork. They also need a Windows device to do their homework on and learn office work. And they also need a mobile phone in case they have a fall on the way to school. They're not allowed it at school, but they still require it. So I'm running 3 different operating systems that I will need to replace at some point. And both Google and Windows have this situation, and so do Apple, where they will upgrade their services and they will stop providing assistance for the previous one. And so therefore you have to go and buy things that you do not need because you will be at risk and you will lose your data if you don't, and it's absolutely forced. And what companies like that do is they don't just do it on their operating system. They work with specific manufacturers and they will go in and say, I want you to lock down that device so that you can't put Linux or any other operating system on it because I want to make sure that you can only use mine if you buy it so that the chips will not operate. So that's where we're getting manufacturers that are agreeing to allow chips that can run everything to only, essentially breaking them so that they can only be operated by 1 or 2 companies.
Now, there's an enormous momentum to the hardware industry, and the software industry is works in collusion with it now to deliberately obsolete things. So we'll mention that deliberate obsolescence again. Also, bad software hijacks your devices and it bricks it, it ruins it, so that really all that you can do with it is throw it away, and that then goes into a landfill. Some examples of that was Apple with an update they did to stop because batteries run down as they grow older, and they basically sabotaged the phones to make them run slower, which caused many people to think that they were broken and then throw them away. And Apple products for years have been designed not to be serviceable, not to be maintainable. So when they come to end of life, they just end up in the trash.
Yeah, you can't replace them at all. The parts aren't available for an engineer to be able to go in and do that. And you find as well on a lot of new technology, like brand new smart TVs, not only is it locked down, it's too difficult for you to get to with standard tools. So you would need machinery at a factory level to actually do those basic repair tasks.
There are new technologies around that are interesting, that potentially have utility, such as AI, massive air quotes around that, and the blockchain. The thing that people are becoming aware of is that these use colossal amounts of energy. So in order to keep them going, currently the blockchain uses approximately the energy use of the Netherlands, which is actually a heavily industrialized European country.
Users of oil and gas.
AI is approaching the same level. So combined together, AI and the blockchain are using approximately a quarter of the energy use of the whole of Europe. If you were to stop those 2 technologies tomorrow, just think about what the impact of that would be on CO2 production and potential planetary temperature situations.
And what do we mostly use an AI for right now? What are most people doing? They're just doing images. They're putting themselves in fun backgrounds or over and over again to get different results without realising that the data cost for that or the energy cost is extraordinarily high. And what we also see is we have things like broadcasters as well. Who, when they want to, so they use digital technology, they use data centres, the same ones. When they want to actually broadcast something out now, because they're doing it over the IP, they have to phone the national grid and ask permission to upload the film to the grid, because our grid is so under pressure that an upload like that, it can't cope. So they have to do it at 4 a.m. and they have to shut off other parts of the country just to get that egress done, which is a nightmare. And that's already where we've just moved the broadcasting into that. So we're going into a position where we do not have the power in this country to even run the AI or the blockchain.
If that happens to every industry, just think about what the impact of that's going to be. So here's that, so much equipment that could be, so much equipment that could be used for decades. I have a Nokia phone that I had for 10 years.
This is very old.
This is ancient, old standard issue piece of kit, which is fairly bulletproof. As the inefficiency and ineffectiveness of proprietary software, as we were saying, that lots of software is written not to be efficient, but to continue to demand more and more resources, which feeds the hardware industry and keeps you on an upgrade cycle way, way in advance of what you actually need. And also monopoly. We've kind of gravitated now to a sort of 4 or 5 main US-based tech monopolies. Which is what IBM president said back in the 60s. In the end, the world will only need 5 computers. They'll be called Google, Microsoft, Amazon, etc. Yeah? But the problem is that traditional industry, if you want to make concrete or steel, has efficiencies of scale. It actually helps to be a monopoly, and regulation is put there to stop that natural gravitation towards monopoly. Tech is not the same. It's actually much more efficient when it's distributed, when it's diverse, when it's constructed bottom up according to standards. And so there are no natural monopolies in tech. But there aren't. No matter what people tell you, it's absolutely ridiculous that we've ended up in a situation where we've got these kind of 5 or 6 big companies.
And then what you find is even the American government this week has tried to regulate Google to separate that monopoly. So it's hoping to separate the search function from all the other operations that it does. But the realities of that, even at a federal level, seem almost impossible. And so even though there's drive, the realities may not be as easy for anyone to solve the problems that may come from that. Just moving systems may cut you all off maps for a year. They don't want to do that. It hurts them. So we are seeing that monopolies, although we can try and regulate against them, are almost impossible in a technological situation to actually resolve.
Really, really hard to break. You need more than regulation. You need policy that's built, dyed into the wall, and you need effective enforcement of laws. You need much more governance to challenge this kind of monopoly, policy that kind of helps smaller companies to develop and so on. And
not just the policy we have at the moment, it's individual, it can be, even in America, it's statewide. Over here, Europe will do something, but other countries may opt out. We need an international standard or an international law that starts to tackle some of these monopolies because they're international products.
Okay, so forced obsolescence has been a concept that's been around for a long time, and speaking as an engineer, I'll just defend it for a moment. There are good reasons to have forced obsolescence. For example, if you build a washing machine in which you have an electric motor, and the electric motor has a 5-year lifespan. We know it has a 5-year lifespan. It's really hard to build a better motor because the brushes wear out or something. It would be insane and damaging to build the rest of the washing machine to last for 20 years unless you specifically designed it to be very maintainable and make it easy to switch the motor in and out, which is not what happens with most tech goods these days. So what happens instead is we don't have planned obsolescence, which is the good kind. We have basically what you might call defective by design, in which flaws are built into the device or they're applied post facto. Basically, the device is sabotaged, often over the network, once it's out there. With updates. Security updates, no less, because they're for your good, right? Hiding behind fake security. And what this does, things like remote kill switches or logic bombs, where the device is literally programmed to fail on a certain day, or it's accessed over the network and it's disabled so that you then have to buy a new one. According to all the laws, like Computer Misuse Act and so on, if I did that as an individual, I'd spend 20 years in prison. If you are a giant company and you do that to millions of people, well, it's like Stalin said, 1 death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths is a statistic. And this is all's fair in love and war and business.
Well, they'll just say, sorry, that's what we get for, oh, sorry that we cost you £6 billion because someone did a network config issue. We'll roll that back, or we'll fix it, or we'll make a minor change to the terms and conditions, but actually we won't. So that's what we end up getting, is that work said it will be done, but it isn't.
So it's effectively sabotage. You had a good example, didn't you, Helen? What's about the hard disk where you couldn't... it had a trip switch in it. There's a trip switch inside the... You said it was...
The Linux computer that I've got even now.
And I was saying that's like a very nasty bomb design.
Yeah.
You know, it was booby-trapped. Essentially, the device was booby-trapped, so that if you tried to maintain...
That's in a PlayStation 4, so that's what you're on about. PlayStation 4, our hard drive broke years ago, and when you open it up, it actually says, be very careful. So we decided to go, look, we know about technology. There's actually a little device in there that it's a little blue tab, and it's connected to your hard drive. And so that if you move it, and they say at PlayStation, it's so that they know your warranty is gone and that you've tampered with it. But if you open it up and you don't move it, you'll actually kill the device. So when we had to open it up and wait, unhinge the plastic clip, and then we could get in and do it, because otherwise we can't replace the bit that we've done, because the whole thing will be destroyed. So it is a trip switch for warranty purposes only.
I think the key piece of evidence there is that from an engineering point of view, there is no need to design it that way.
The clip alone is enough. If you've undone it, like, you know, it's obvious it's been broken. You don't need to then sabotage the drive. There should be no sense of when you open up something that you own that it is then broken. It is yours. You should be able to repair it and do what you need to do with that device.
There's 7 R's. I don't know if you guys know them all. I'm trying really hard to keep track of them. Let's see if we can get at least 5 of them. Refuse, rethink, reuse, recycle, repair, reduce, regift, which was to give on things that you didn't want to somebody else. Anyway, there's plenty of them. Technology, hardware and software is extremely hostile against all of these. You know, whether it's defective by design from a physical engineering point of view, from a software engineering point of view, or the malicious enforcement of intellectual property and so on, in order to stop people sharing and reusing software components. So what we have within the digital stuff really is a very, very poor show when it comes to the environmental impact and the ecology. Okay.
There is a phone called the Fair phone, which is supposed to be able to swap out bits of.
That's right. Modularity is one of our key weapons against this. And as we were just saying earlier, that many of the solutions to these digital problems are they're bottom up. And the solutions are diversity, modularity, and international standards, so that things can be reconfigured and resold in different markets. That's an absolutely deadly weapon against this centralized monopoly kind of model. Yeah. One of the things that we're going to be really trying to impress today is that most people will argue all of these points from a market capitalist point of view. And what we're going to hopefully give you a knockdown argument for is that this has nothing to do with markets. That actually digital technology evades all of what we know about normal markets. The classical economic idea, Adam Smith, supply and demand, does not exist in technology markets. You may think it does because there's a kind of illusion that you're buying things that you want. But what's really going on is this push model. And I chose this picture because it's kind of appropriate. This is us in the pram being pushed along by mother who knows best. And it's not a demand-driven economy. Most of us don't have any clue about technology, so how could we know what we want? Most of us actually don't have the capacity, in a legal sense, to make the decisions about the technology that we buy and use. So what we see is there's, kind of, basically, like greenwashing, we have, what did we call it?
Oh, tech washing.
Where specious technical arguments are given for why you need or want or must have this or that, but you've really no deep knowledge that can examine that and break it apart. So the project of digital self-defense and intellectual self-defense is educational, and it's about informing people and giving you the tools to make those kinds of inquiries, do that kind of research and make those kind of decisions for yourself, for your
And I guess it's another thing of why is it being forced on us? Well, if we look at what they said originally 5 years ago about AI, they said it won't replace us. What came out this year, only a few weeks ago at a conference, is they all met and said they want it to replace us, that they're going to free us all of labour. But no one's thought about the long-term economic or psychological impacts of what are we all going to do if there are no jobs? How do we... How are we going to continue to have children with very little income? And if we have basic income, how do we know that that's not going to be slowly decreased over time, so that we're potentially, most of us are living on less than 1% of income, while the very few lucky ones who own the AI machines, who do all the labour, are living a much different lifestyle. And so what we find with technology is it's actually there to reduce that working capability. It actually reduces our living standards more and more as technology goes on in this way.
And I guess a universal basic income would be universal. In reality, where we've seen that kind of thing happen, it's predicated on, should we call it good citizenship, like in China, you know, not engaging in wrong think and not being a gossip or having ideas above your station and so on.
And one of the leading Chinese political activists that's very outspoken about their system said, it's all well and good, we're all middle class now and we're doing all right economically, we're one of the best, it's the best time in China. What happens in 40 years' time when we're not doing well economically? What does that income then look like? What does that system look like? Well, that could look like we're all living on the breadline as a result of relying on that system, essentially.
There are so many specialist arguments that you bump into, like so often, like paperless, for example. I mean, this is pushed a lot, but when you think about it, paper is a renewable resource. We get through, I can say this, we get through a shit ton of it every year, just wiping our bottoms, right? When somebody makes an argument like we're making the bus system paperless and you have to use a contactless card so that, you know, we're saving the planet by not having to print out a ticket for you, that's absolute rubbish.
They make it cheaper too. They say it's cheaper if you have a ticket.
But that's what is cheaper for them.
Yeah.
That's why they want you to use the technology, and this is what, back to that thing, the technology isn't for your or my benefit, it's for the benefit of the bus company, it's not for the driver either. They just don't want to keep buying that paper in. And they're not thinking about what you were about to say, which is the digital cost to the environment for every single one of those transactions.
The stuff that's hidden that they don't, that you won't be told about, you know, the cost of running the data center, the cost of running the security operation to make sure that all of that telemetry, which is gathered on all of you, all of that information about where you go and what you do, which wasn't there before when you used cash, which is anonymous, which is a very, very valuable data set, and which the bus company now makes a lot of money by selling. You know, where's the economic equations around that? You don't see them because you're not supposed to know about that.
But we see those in bit format. So we can essentially see, we know from networking that that simple message just sending through the click from your phone to a bank, it's going around the world multiple times. We know how many countries that we can trace all of the places it's gone in an instant. We know exactly how many millions of packets of data that's been spread into. It used to be one little ticket. It's now this huge busload of data that you can't see that's hidden from us.
And obviously during COVID there was a lot of disinformation and dishonesty around technology and so on, but we need to move on. So this term civic cybersecurity, let's expand on that.
So we all have the right to our own civic cybersecurity, just as we do with our own security generally, so our police forces, and we pay our governments and we pay our Secret Service to keep us safe. Well, we're supposed to be doing the same to keep our digital rights safe, but it doesn't seem to quite work that way. If you've heard of the NCSC, have you been on their website? Have you read through any of their stuff? Probably not, but you're all paying for that service. We're all paying for that service. We're paying for hundreds of people every day to write documents to keep us safe, but we're not really aware that they exist or what they do because it's not coming to us. Because essentially, if we all stop Facebook and Google and Microsoft and we all decide we're not using apps and we stop giving them the data, they actually reduce their income. They reduce their money. All of the people like the bus company you mentioned, they will reduce their money as well. So it's actually counterproductive for all of us to be secure at home and to keep our data under log. It's also not good for them either, because if we're all secure, then we're not easy targets and they'll go more potentially for businesses and things like that. So what I do find in conversations that I have is, are the ordinary people, is my 90-year-old grandmother being thrown under an Indian scam bus, essentially, and other countries do it as well, in order to stop those huge scam houses going for Goldman Sachs? We think that that is generally the case. If you have easy targets that seem to have money, then they'll stop going for those lucrative ones. But we believe that every single one of us, your grandmother, your nurse, your doctor, your child, has a right to understand how to keep themselves safe online and how to keep that privacy of their own data and their own autonomy to themselves. We're now in a situation where a child born today, the advertising company knows all about them and can build up a very, very good FBI profile before they've hit the age of 16, to the point where children born today will not be able to say no to advertising. You'll be sent a personal advert and you will buy that chocolate bar because it is timed to your psychology so
Because
well.
100 PhDs in psychology have been working on messaging you. Yeah. Okay, so what we'd like to do is to teach from a very early age. We'd like to see school curriculums changed so that from primary school we're starting to teach children about intellectual self-defense, digital self-defense, how to, and this is part of a bigger picture of civic cybersecurity, which we're going to need if we want to have a technological society. And in a sense, you can see this in defense of the technological society, right? Because without this, it's going to be a train wreck. It's going to be an absolute catastrophe. And I think we're already starting to see some of the signs of that. So this is why we're here today.
We want to try and get you off that technological dependency. We're all told you need a phone. Andy hasn't had a phone for years.
I've never had a smartphone. I've never owned a smartphone.
Got maps? Yeah. We get about. Ask for directions if you need to. People are willing. Just go and show him.
I'll show you. Yeah, it's in my jacket if you want. Oh, thanks, Helen. Cheers, mate.
He calls it his communicator.
Is it not there?
No, it's
okay.
Nokia 3310.
Oh, well, she knows better than me, yeah?
The first ever mobile phone.
If you
load up the internet, does it?
If we go to hacker conferences, to defence conferences and things like that, and you can spot the very serious people. They all have Nokias.
But also so do all the drug dealers these days, because we always make the joke that when we travel internationally, Andy's going to get pulled into a room one day and they'll be like, why do you have this phone? And I'll have to explain it's because
I work in cybersecurity. If you worked in cybersecurity, you'd have a phone like that too.
But that's why the drug dealers are using it, because they can't be tracked by the police or the bad guys, and that's why Andy also has it, but for very different motivations.
Very different motivation, yeah. So how to achieve autonomy, self-sufficiency, these are gargantuan tasks, but we're up for it. We're with the resistance. This is a very generational thing. What we're noticing actually is that the alpha gen, so this is after Gen Z now, so what age group?
So they're about, well, from birth right up now until about 15. So it's the next generation is about to be born.
Their usage is tailing off. There's no uptake from them. They're very cynical. They get it. The really young kids now get it. There's already been, I mean, we passed actually peak smartphone was about 2012, something like that. The Economist wrote massively on it at the time. As did many Atlantic, New York Times. Everybody noticed it really, and it was dubbed the techlash, which kind of actually prefigures COVID, of course, and stuff. What happened with the pandemic is that we then had a reconfiguration, which really boosted a lot of big tech monopoly. But prior to that, we could already see people. It was first of all the market saturated. Many people have more than 2 phones. They have 2 or 3 handsets, right? There's just nowhere to sell it. So what we're in is an accelerating situation of pressure to continue that manufacturing going and to keep pushing things. And that's where it became a real push economy. And
children have learned, haven't they? And this is something that you listen to. If you go and speak to a young person now, they say, why are you on your phone all the time? Get off your phone. And that's good. We work on our phones, so they don't see the difference when other parents are at the park and they're at their phones. We don't do that as much, but I've had my 7-year-old come up and go, that mum just looks at her phone. Yeah. Her child's trying to tell them they've built a castle and she didn't even notice.
Those kids will chastise adults now.
They will. Tell you off. Get off your phone. Stop it. Look at me. So, have we know about smart motorways? Not very smart. So this is why you've written smart motorways are dumb. So a lot of people think, well, why doesn't it work very well? Because the company who originally created the software that did a lovely pitch to the government were nice and cheap, so the government bought them in. What they didn't tell the government is they haven't actually finished the software and it hasn't even gone through testing and we don't know if it's actually going to work. So they built the motorways, put up the cameras, and they went, where's the software code? No, it doesn't work. What do you mean it doesn't work? Well, it doesn't work, so we can't do the smart motorway. You shouldn't have spent all that money on it. So now we're in a situation where we have smart motorways, but the cameras do not work. Most of them are not actually watching the actual, and you can find these cameras, you can go online, type in your local area, you can find all the motorway cameras. What you'll find is about 20% of them are not looking at the road, because they have been moved, or wind has disturbed them and they're staring at the floor instead. And you're supposed to feel safe and secure that the software is looking after you.
Well, it was sold it. You were sold it. I think what we're trying to say with this slide here is that a lot of the technological mythology is ideological. It's predicated on an ideological mission.
Or things that aren't available yet.
And it turns out that there is incredible complexity to these problems, and with all really complex systems, you get bizarre side effects and completely unexpected results. So a couple that we picked was the enormous amount of CO2 which is put into the atmosphere based on creating more cheaper flights.
Skyscanner, Kayak, places like that. You'll go to them because the flights will save you £600, but sometimes you're flying around the world in other places. You had a ridiculous one where someone saved £1,000 for 6 different flights.
So to fly to like Paris and then to Amsterdam and then to Helsinki was like 150 quid, whereas to fly directly from Heathrow to Helsinki was like 600 quid or something. Now, as we get squeezed economically, the convenience part of that gives way to just pure economics. So what we're now doing is we're taking ridiculously long flights to save a few quid, and it's the algorithm which is presenting those options. It's all, this is something that philosophers have understood for a long time, is that you create complex systems and they have perverse incentives and bizarre side effects. And
Airbnb is another example. Seemed like a nice way to share flats with people. Now whole cities have been decimated because nobody really lives there. Barcelona is a key example of that, where most of the properties are currently sitting empty, waiting for tourists to arrive. Athens is another one where they're going to have to, the actual museums and the historical record that you're going to see is being ruined because the amount of numbers of people that are now going. And that's not because of hotels, that's Airbnb. That's people just go to living with their aunt in the summer and renting out their place. That is new tourists coming in that the authorities were not prepared to come in. They weren't aware of. But Skyscanner and Kayak and places like that were, because they sold those flights.
So yeah, there are connected perverse incentives, and the tragedy of all of this is that these are not malicious actions. This is a tragedy. These are good ideas put together by smart people with the best of intentions. The result is a dog's dinner of waste, pollution, and social disorder. So, I mean, we've seen this play out in social media, obviously. This helps us to understand the concept of technophagism a little bit more. So I've got a couple of definitions here. It's the joining of business and state for furthering a non-democratic, illiberal regime through digital technology, in which your phone becomes really a social control device.
And when you say governments, we don't mean democratic governments, because there are still democratic governments. The more undemocratic your government gets, the more that technology is used against you. And what we're seeing, and I know our US listeners will be a bit upset, but we're seeing that in the US right now.
Definitely.
We just spoke to some really amazing guys called We Are the Builders. They work inside the American government. They're watching horrible things take place, and they're struggling to actually whistleblow that information because they're being shut down by their own government, whereas 5 years ago they would have been applauded for the work that they're doing for their government. So governments can change very, very, very quickly, overnight actually. And they will use that technology, and that's exactly what they said, didn't they? That the existing technology that was built for the services of the American people have been weaponized against the American people.
Yeah,
and there's
really,
no
really
way
scary.
to undo it.
Because when we use words like government and governance, this is not, again, there's a tragedy going on here. If you've got authoritarian elements within the government which are leveraging surveillance capitalism for social control and so on, they're faced with situations where no matter what they do with the technology, it's going to eventually be hijacked and turned against them with hugely anti-democratic outcomes.
And we can see that with Elon Musk is a good example, where he's bought an entire social media platform in order to get his political opinion and his personal opinions out to a wider audience to start changing the narrative.
I mean,
and ended up in government.
We've had people buying newspapers for decades, haven't we, like Murdoch and so on. Obviously, people who want power by communication systems. But the ability to buy, control the whole of Facebook or the whole of Twitter, what did he buy? This is unprecedented amount of influence.
And there's no control. You get private companies or private citizens that can now buy the entire, essentially the newspaper organisation, which means they've bought the message that the people are receiving. And your government can't prevent that or stop that. They have to just roll with that. And that's really dangerous for all of us.
Okay, so here's some of the elements. I mean, you're familiar with them all. Mass surveillance, social behavioural control. This is
a cover for techno-fascism. No, it was correctly. It's this way round. You're supposed to think of it as backwards because techno-fascism is backwards. We're supposed to be freed with technology. It's not supposed to be used to put you in chains, and that's what Joel Kavanaugh worked out, and that's used correct. It's used for mass surveillance, social
bit of a plug for
control.
a book of poems there by an old, now deceased friend and colleague of mine, Joe Kabakov.
He's the first person who really wrote about techno-fascism, wasn't it, in the world? That was sort of very, very
I
publicly.
believe there was somebody before who kind of used the term fairly widely, but yeah, Joel wrote a book of poems on that. Gamification of life. I think the best example of that is Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror. The episode's called Falling Down, with this kind of grinning, vacuous woman who lives in the life in a box, and when it starts to all go wrong. Have you seen that episode? Black Mirror is amazing. You should watch Black Mirror. Yeah. And this is why we love arts, theatre, literature is a really good way of communicating this kind of thing. Science fiction is really important.
And it used to help fight against this social and behavioural control that used to be very difficult before the internet for that to come overseas. It would be difficult for us to hear the opinions of Russia. It would be difficult for us to be influenced by a state enemy, whereas now there's a troll house that has been a long time in Russia whose job it is every single day is to convince the British public to argue amongst ourselves and to essentially lay the foundations for a potential invasion.
Well, those psyops have always been there, so you can go, well, not always, but certainly going back to the 80s, you can look at someone like Yuri Bezmenov, who's a KGB defector. He went to Canada, I think, and he wrote and did a lot of information about how that project, even at the beginning of the Cold War, again, divide and conquer, spreading disinformation. It was a long-term project, like the kind of Long March, the Chinese kind of view. The Soviet communist view was to infiltrate organisations and sow seeds of discontent and disinformation with a very, very long horizon. They're thinking 50 years. Things like
All you've got to do right now is load up social media and scroll, and you will see that and read that in a second. And that's what we're talking about with this social behavioural control. It's no longer in the arms of your government and your allies. It's any government, any person, any organisation, any dissident, any extremist group can get to you and can start to manipulate you in ways that you might not be able to defend against.
And what GCHQ have been, and MI5 have been telling us more recently is the huge overlap now of that with criminal elements. So the ability to hire, saboteurs within your own nation state, and to pay them in cryptocurrencies or payment in kinds and things, and get them to go out and commit criminal acts and so on. I mean, this is all old craft, right? But we're seeing it accelerated in the digital age such a lot.
And they can target large, massive groups and you can click a demographic essentially and target every single one of them. That's millions of people at the click of a very quick button. That wasn't something you could do in the 1980s. Mm-hmm.
Overlaps with all of these other problems, censorship, secret laws. I'm ashamed to say that I do believe, you'd have to ask somebody more legally educated, but we do kind of have those in the UK now. The inability to know the law that's critical. That's a real sea change in culture. And so-called cybernetic justice. I wish we had time to go into Norbert Weiner's work and look at the whole the concept of cybernetics and what you might call algorithmic government. But this is really where human beings lose control, where suddenly you're fined or made homeless or fired from a job for reasons that you don't even know. And it's not because there's a secret cabal of nomenclature, of like the inner party deciding that. It's that's been encoded into an algorithm which no humans ever touch. and it's just dispensing, algorithmic prejudice,
The post office.
prejudice.
Yeah, the post office scandal is a really good example
Great
of that,
example.
where the computer is right and the person's wrong, and they put them in prison anyway.
What is atomization?
Atomization is where each of us live in our own tiny little bubble and don't communicate with one another anymore. We're divided, even within families. So one striking example is that if you look at photographs or things from before about the 1940s, of a house at night, you would see one room lit with a sort of orange glow. Now that might be the fire or the family sitting around the wireless or whatever. Now you take photographs of dwellings and you see 4 little blue lights, and each one of those is one child in the room on their own on the phone. So even at the family level, we've been split from each other.
Actually, as soon as I gave my 11-year-old son a phone when he went up to senior school, I lost contact with his life. I don't know who his friends are. I don't really know what he does. I don't know what music he's into, because it's all through the phone. And you ask questions and they don't want to answer because they're exhausted. They're doing all that with their friends all day. All the phone does is go beep, 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 beep. So I know he has a life, but I'm not a part of that as his mother anymore.
Well, you go above and beyond.
Yeah, he knows to give me his phone, and if there's a bit of history making, he doesn't have a phone anymore.
You are a very strict digital mum, but I mean, if you want to see the outcome of that, I recommend the Netflix Adolescence. Has anyone watched that? It's pretty harrowing, pretty sad, but that's kind of what happens in an atomised culture. Okay, let's move on. Oh, scary. Does anyone recognise that one?
I saw the film in the cinema years ago, Clockwork Orange.
Correct, well done, sir. This is the Ludovico technique. I've forgotten the guy's name. He's one of the droogs, and he's being subjected to
the algorithm.
The algorithm, yes. The justice
We're
algorithm.
all slaves to the algorithm. So that's whether that's on our phones or our social, or essentially as our content. So this is something that comes up for us quite a lot, is if we want to monetize our podcast, that's all brilliant, but it now means that we have to give control to someone who's paying. So what we're seeing is art is no longer free, and every artist in the world, no matter what they do, will tell you this, that they now have usually a big tech company that will be backing their artwork, and they will then say, well, we don't like that, drop that, and we'll stop paying you. And that's from every single content creator on planet Earth will have a sponsor, and that sponsor will decide what goes out and what doesn't. And that sponsor will decide based on an algorithm that they have not written. And it's based on viewing numbers or potential viewing numbers. So we've all seen things like Netflix will cancel your favourite TV show because the algorithm was never designed for the amount of people that are using its services today. It was designed a long time ago. The algorithm doesn't work anymore. Algorithms are very rarely updated to that extent. So
I think the key concept here is that nobody really knows how it works anymore. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we could have put lots of images here of revolutionaries and these are revolutionaries. These ladies are from. We would not be here today without these ladies who all fought Mr. Hitler. These are the cryptographers and code breakers from Bletchley Park in their 70s and 80s, I believe. All of them had observed D notices and were told never to speak about what they did at Bletchley Park. And to a woman, none of them ever said anything. There is one. There's one chap up here, isn't there? Yeah.
I heard a tale. A couple got married after the war, and one evening one of them was off to a social do, so they left, and then the other partner was also going to a social do, so they left. And when one of them arrived at the social do, they walked into a room and their jaw hit the floor because their partner was at the same do. It was a Bletchley Park reunion. Although they both worked at Bletchley Park,
they never knew.
And they found
That's insane.
this D notice, whatever, to never tell anybody.
Yeah.
So they hadn't told
Each other.
They hadn't told each other.
Wow.
Now that's like me and my wife. Like she's a psychotherapist, and I work in cybersecurity. These highly compartmentalised suppers,
How was your day? Fitting. How was yours? Good.
Adequate, yeah. I mean, I use this as an example of this is not Che Guevara, Cassian and or revolutionaries. This is you and me and our kids and our grandparents and our mothers. This is our job to fight the scourge, right? It's everybody's problem and it's everybody's task. We need to stop technology being turned from a tool into a weapon.
Yeah, if it does that, stop using it. We don't have to use Google, we don't have to use Facebook. If you don't like how it behaves, delete it. Or just access it through the browser as and when you need to. I stopped using Facebook years ago. I miss funerals, I miss weddings, if it's that important, I'll find out anyway. So you don't miss it actually when you delete it, you don't.
Yeah. What we're risking is creating a brittle, dependent, dumbed down society enslaved to corporate monopolies and pseudoscience. That's not the future that we were promised or the future that we want.
Where we don't have potential jobs anymore and we're all just sitting around going, what art shall I make today? Well, I can't because the algorithm told me it's rubbish.
Okay, so are you guys comfortable to continue? Is this sitting well with people? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to a little bit of what we might do. This is ironically here, although I ironically have this on my wall to remind me that the most important thing is to talk about stuff. It always is, whether that's talking about drugs or sex education with your children, whether that's talking about difficult problems. And the answer to that is always talk about it, verbalise it. That helps you think. We are actually beings who think not just in our minds but through language, and language is what we reflect it off other people through writing, through conversation. This is how we work things out. So these are the things that we have to overcome. You'll be familiar with all of these.
Especially from environmental issues, it's exactly the same sort of language. Oh, well, there's nothing you can do. Oh, the problem's too big, I can't solve it. But you can, because you're the consumer. They are supposed to be working for us as consumers. So if we stop consuming the products that are most harmful, they'll have to either fix it or come up with something else, or they can all retire.
And if you believed in markets the way we're all supposed to, then this is merely changing our demands, right? I mean, this is merely changing our demands. And there's often frames a coordination problem, but the coordination problem ceases to be one when we all talk about it. The greatest enemy, there's this a myth that my wife loves to talk about, which is love and hate are not opposites. Love and hate are very closely clustered together. Hate often turns to love and love to hate. They are clustered around concern and care, what Heidegger called Sorge, the concern that you have about the world.
Isn't it the same feeling, but it's a different emotion at the time? Yeah, so hate is love, just you hate your children sometimes, but you also love them the whole time. But when they're screaming at you and they're 15 years old, you probably aren't, you still love them, but it's an angry love. Well, that's what hate is, yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you say
emotion.
that you love or hate technology, the opposite of love and hate is ambivalence, is a lack of care. That's the opposite of love and of hate, is ambivalence, is that you do not care about it. And so therefore you don't want to talk about it, you have no stake in it.
We get this a lot, right? We get a lot of people go, well, I've got no data to hide. Oh, you don't want to hide your medical records then from private companies, you know, like the insurers who might do your travel insurance. Oh no, I do want to hide that. All right. What about all those embarrassing things that you might have said around your phone in front of people, you in the bath when you took it in and you forgot that everyone can probably see you or might have recorded that? Would that be embarrassing? Because we can retrieve that back and there are people who could retrieve that back and people don't get that. You know, there are people who still do it. We hear this all the time. Yeah, I've got nothing to hide. I take my phone in the bath or in the shower and I just let the camera film me. I don't mind if they can see it. But actually, when you then bring up cameras that you can break into, you watch their faces drop to the ground. Yes, we can all see you on holiday in the pool because the camera's faced on the internet and anyone can log on. That's the same with your phones. You don't know.
You're just being a Luddite. You're being a Luddite. Yeah? You're
terrible.
Anti-progressive. That's what you are.
I know, I'm terrible.
Yeah? Because all this is towards progress. Well, if your doctor tells you that you've got a progressive illness, you don't want that, okay? Progress is contextual, right? Progress is a vector. It has a magnitude and a direction is much more important than the magnitude, yeah? Progress is relative to the context that it's in. So to call somebody anti-progressive, I mean, what does that even mean? You know, if the progress is towards catastrophe, then I'm anti-progressive, right? You don't want to be left behind.
That's something that comes up a lot, particularly in work. We were talking about this, a company will say, we've bought this new AI and we expect you all to learn it because you don't want to get left behind. Because if you get left behind, we'll replace you with a 25-year-old over here who says he knows all about AI.
So that's not a warning, it's a threat, isn't it?
It is a threat, yeah, that's what happens. And we don't get trained to use these new technologies often by our employer before it's deployed. It's, this is a new system, off you go. Oh, wait, hang on, you broke something, that's not acceptable. Oh, you got us hacked, that's your fault.
So this accusation or this threat of being left behind, think maybe if you were one of the people somewhere in Germany when the train left for Auschwitz, you were left behind. That was good. you were glad to be left behind, yeah? Another one is missing out. You know, if you were the person who the bullet went 6 inches to the left and killed that guy, you missed out. Right, that was good. It was good that you missed out. Being left behind and missing out are entirely contextual, so don't be threatened by those. And also this idea of you don't want to be different. What we're seeing now is a reaction against that. So the Alpha Gen.
A few Gen Z are actually rejecting technology now. They're avidly saying, no, I don't want tech. And it comes along with this environmental consciousness that they have as well. We don't want makeup, we don't want tax. They do not want fast fashion anymore. And they worked out that they have the power as a consumer to demand those things, to go in and do that. Yeah, as children, they're demanding that now.
And caring less and less about what other people think of them. So that social pressure, which has always kept people in line, is evaporating, which is really interesting from a psychosocial point of view. Okay. Your reality is limited by your horizons. I've forgotten who said that, but there are limitations to technology. We're always kind of presented with the idea that it's a panacea and can solve everything. There are clearly, you know, in the face of AI, there are clearly things that not only would we not want AI to do, but it never will really be able to do that for like dating, psychotherapy, relational things, which are human to human.
Yeah, dating is a chemistry, it's a smell situation. You go talk to someone, it doesn't matter whether you get on or not because your body's already decided whether they want to mate. You can't do that over a screen. So you can go on 1,000 different dates because you think someone's attractive, turn up, within a second your subconscious gone, no, you're related.
Pheromones were in charge all along.
You got a distant ancestor, not bothered, you both make horrible diseases, don't want it. And we get that a lot with things on the internet. You know, it doesn't work in the internet environment. And what we see as well, people say, well, I socialise through my phone. No, you don't. What your brain does is it goes, I'm on my phone. I'm on a device. I'm watching TV with someone. You're not actually living that experience because your brain is always reminded that it's actually sat in its front room. So when you're actually going out to like a concert or a sports venue and you get your phone out, the minute you bring that screen in, no memory of that environment or that situation is created.
It's been intermediated. Yeah. So, you know.
All you remember is you staring at a device. You don't remember the environment that you're in.
Max Frisch said, I love this one, I use it again and again. Technologies are a way of not having to experience the world. So it intermediates the world in a way that negates experience.
And that's why you see when people, for example, we're seeing incidents where people are being attacked on the tube and instead of jumping in or phoning the police, people get their phones out. It's not because they don't want to get involved, it's because they psychologically want to step away. So as soon as they get their phone out, oh, they're not traumatised now. Yay, I'm hiding behind a screen and my brain's not here now. But we're doing that more and more out of choice and we're actually stepping away from our own lives, from our own experiences. And if you've used a device consistently, addictively your whole life, you're not going to have the same experience as someone who doesn't have a device. You're probably going to have a lot less of it.
Do you want to do the Graeber quote? Okay. He passed away quite recently, and I wasn't really aware of David Graeber's work, but it's good. The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make, constructivists, and could just as easily make differently. And never has this been more true of anything than technology. And I can tell you, hand on heart, with absolute sincerity as a computer scientist and an engineer, most of what we have with technology is effectively arbitrary. The von Neumann architecture is one architecture of many, you know. The design of microprocessors, the way that software is written, It's effectively arbitrary. We could have built this in many different ways. And at MIT, there's an entire department of alternative computing, which, if you're into computers at all, will blow your mind when you understand that computation is a fundamental mathematical concept which could be implemented in almost any way. I mean, in a way, DNA and our whole biology is a form of computation. So never be convinced or bamboozled by the argument that this is the way that we've made it and it has to be that way. Absolutely, we could rewrite the rules starting tomorrow. Okay, back to my world, practical conservation. Hello?
Yeah, you don't need a new phone or a PC. I said my children have got 3 devices. They're not new. We don't do new tech in my house. And you know what? Companies like Microsoft and stuff are actually coming in and helping with that. We now have cloud gaming. So I have gamers in my house. Every few years they would have had to buy a new computer. They don't have to do that anymore. They can stream someone else's device. Do they have new phones? No, because they can buy second hand. Do I have a new laptop? No, I will buy an old Windows 10 laptop, get Windows out of it and stick Linux on it. That's how I operate. And that's what I've done for my son. I was told, oh, you need a Google Chrome, and the school are going to find out now, but he's actually been running a VM Windows Google Chrome with a Linux in the background and all sorts on it. They think that it's a Google Chrome device because that's what it looks like, but it's not. It's not. And they haven't noticed yet, but there's a Linux device on their computer system. So technically the VM is running on a Linux server and it's running Windows 10 in order to get the Google Chrome to work through the VM service. So not noticed it. You don't need to. Yeah, virtual machine. Yeah, as far as they know, it's a Chromebook, brand new, but it's not. No, it's just a little window that pretends it's a Chromebook. I am very much deceiving them. I'm testing their security, because if they had good security, which a school should, they should have noticed the minute that went on their network, but they haven't yet. It's been a year.
Okay, we recently wrote a little mini report, request for the comment for the Treasury on cash. I'm sure that's something that's on all of your minds. Cash is a very, very important aspect of civic resilience. In fact, we raised the idea that actually cash is a national security asset. Because and we're going to see these outages that we see, they're going to become more and more frequent. We're going to see more and more downtime where you can't pay for things. Well,
I was just in a meeting with Barclays just after, I don't know if you know, but the Barclays cash point stopped working over the weekend. And I was very lucky to go into a meeting on the Monday morning with the man whose job it was to investigate it. It wasn't Barclays. There's nothing to do with Barclays. It was the machine operators of the cash point that had a cyber attack. Where their programme was stopped. Nothing to do with them, and it wasn't just Barclays that were affected. There were multiple banks around the world that were affected, and people seem to think that the financial industry is really robust. Well, it's not, because they all rely on these third parties, and you only need 1 or 2 to go down. Every single cash point in this country won't work. The banks will not be able to give you your money. So our advice has always been that everyone should have £300, probably 4 now, in their house in case food stocks go, in case we lose
and any
our online
business,
connectivity.
Any business at all, you should retain the capability to take cash, even if that's just using a book, pen and paper, and a box, you know, and train people to be able. It's a matter of civic resilience. And there's also another aspect to it, is that contactless cards are kind of extracting, on average, about 1.4% of the entire retail economy of Britain goes out. So all of the so MasterCard, Visa, Stripe, all of the main processes are US-based, ostensibly, and they charge
a service fee. Just like when you go to like Just Eat or something and they charge you that $1.99 to process it over their computer system, your bank's charging that for every little transaction. So if you go in and you buy, I don't know, a drink for £1, that's an extra 2.5 pence that MasterCard earned for nothing.
Well, it's quite, yeah, it doesn't seem like much, but it ranges from 4% down to, most of them are less than 1%, but on average I think we found it was about 1.4, 1.5. That 1.5% of the UK's retail economy is enough to build a new hospital in every town.
And it's all going to the US, because that's who owns all the
Well, it's all going out of the country somewhere.
Yeah, most of it's the US.
Yeah. Whereas if you use cash, obviously that retains its value within that closed economy, right? And anonymity matters, and I'm not going to go into that much now, but it really does, yeah. And also, just from a cybersecurity point of view, the fact that we are I mean, it happened today, didn't it? Yeah. Constantly forced to just install arbitrary apps on our phones.
And then the first thing it asks me is, can I access your location at all times? Absolutely not. But most people will click the easiest option.
You
and
have
that's
no
the
idea
yes.
what that software is doing. You have no idea. And I guarantee you it's doing mostly bad things.
Yeah. So an example, my kid said, can I use Pokemon Go the other day? And I said, well, no, because it was bought out by the Chinese government. Well, what do you mean? Well, it now means that at all times you're playing, it just means the Chinese are tracking everywhere you're going and what you're doing and how long you're standing and looking at things or standing in the park for. You don't want an authoritarian government to sell that to other governments and to have that information on you. You don't know what they're going to do with it.
So sorry to we're not sounding like Reform or Nigel Farage here. If you can anyone read the small print on the bottom of that?
I think it's a bit blurry. It says, be British, buy British, made in Japan.
Look, we're just going to put our cards on the table here from a buy local patriotic point of view. These big American providers, we need to wean ourselves off them. We need to get off them with some urgency, actually. And Europe, technologically, is making a step change. What is happening in Europe now is we are desperately extricating as fast as we can from the US tech market. Microsoft is out, Amazon out, Google gone. Because of the regime change happening in America, because of the Pfizer arrangements, which give US agencies practically unrestricted access into every data pipeline that goes into federal information. Oh God, I'm sorry, it's a non-technical, and I didn't think to.
Pfizer, the drug firm.
No, not the drug company. No, it's
It's a backdoor. It's a legal requirement that every tech firm has to let the American government essentially peer into everything.
And it goes hugely against the European project at the moment. The European trajectory is towards a much more benign and fair technological society that respects privacy rights, it has data protection. We're going to see a huge raft of legislation now coming from Europe. It's already here, regulating AI, regulating data processing. And these companies are not able to comply with it.
They don't want to comply with it.
They don't want to.
They actively stop Americans. There are lots of American groups that we've actually spoken to that are trying to sort this out, but they're stopped at every turn that they can by the big six, who, by the way, pay for now all of the research into computer technology, all of the research into the downsides of the technology that they're making. So do you really think there's bias in that? It's really difficult these days to actually get the information out from those companies that we need. They also do something really funny, don't they, where you ask them for information and then they give you stacks of data, almost binary, that's this high. Even courts do that, and nobody can read it because you have to be an expert. They probably can't read it. So they're very, very intentionally disorganised and, oh no, we can't find it, and the statute of limitations only got a month left. And yeah, or just being really difficult, hiding code within code and things like that. So it's actually really difficult to regulate them anyway.
So you're much better off with a European provider. They have to adhere to much stricter laws. There are huge fines on them if they don't. And they just have better incentives to comply in the first place.
And a better service. So we use Hetzner.
Yeah.
If you get an AWS server go down and you want to get your cloud resources back up, and you call Amazon, you're going to be waiting a while. We call Hetzner up, and they literally go, you can track your 25-year-old lad running across your data center, and you can track him as he does all the things that he needs to do. And then he'll get back on the phone and go, I've done it. You're like, I know, I watched you. It's very fast. Because it's European. It's on time. It's done properly. It's not a waste of time.
And what we want to do is we want to promote and champion a new British technology culture, which is, you can build it here in Swindon. Yeah. We've been talking about the economy of this town. We've been talking before we came in here about what happened after the railways left, about how call centres came in here, and once the call centres have evaporated, where are you? Well, data centres, they are not hard to build. There's a lot of stuff about energy we can talk about, but data centres are no big mystery. It's not rocket science.
And you could quite easily, if you wanted to build Google Maps, I'm pretty sure the government would give you access to satellite data and ordnance data maps. You don't need they give it to the Americans. Why wouldn't they give it to a British company?
Actually, where we had a big Honda site here is going to be a data centre. They've spent almost £1 billion, the company, on acquiring it and to go in there. I don't know, is that good?
Sounds like good news to me.
Good news. So long as it, but what we find is that it will probably be reserved for like AWS and Google Cloud and OneDrive.
Don't be negative.
I am. It's what will happen. That's what most people use it for.
Put solar panels on the top of it, and the entire thing will be carbon neutral.
That's what we've seen with so there is a European one going up, and the first thing that they did, was to make sure it's completely carbon neutral. And it's the first one ever. And to the point where the outside of the building's being covered in ivy, so that it can keep itself cool via nature, underground essentially, rather than on top.
A NIMBYism, or probably. I mean, it would be. I mean, wind is an important resource, but yeah. For a long, long time in other areas of retail, we've had these various trademarks and semiotics around that help us to make good buying decisions, right? This is really missing in tech. It's always been missing in tech, especially around security. There's no sort of cybersecurity rating scale, so that when you buy some...
when you go to your bank, it doesn't say 0 rated 1. You wouldn't go in and ask for an account if it was rated 1 for security, but you would potentially go in for a 10. And let me tell you, there are some banks that should get a 1 compared to others, right? So, but you don't know that as a consumer. You'd never know that because they work very hard to keep that under wraps.
There is one thing that you can do to be absolutely sure, is to use what we call freedom software. People call it free software. Now there's a kind of debacle around that.
Because it's not free.
Because it's not necessarily free, as in cost. And there's an ambiguity because the word free cleaves meaning. People will often say, well, it's free as in freedom, not free as in beer. But for non-beer drinkers, why not just call it freedom software, right? It has an ideological component, and it represents your freedom to use it as you please, to share it, to modify it, redistribute it, and to...
and you don't have to pay for it, which is great, right? Because you can sponsor it. But what we say is it's not free, is there is some poor person who spends all their free time doing that job and doesn't get paid for it. So what we like to do is we like to support it, and we whack them some donations, especially when what you see in America is that they'll have a bank holiday and suddenly you'll have loads of Linux updates or loads of dependency updates. It's because there's one man with 6 cats going, shit. He's off that weekend and he's got to update because the whole world's reliant on it. And they don't get paid for that. They do it because they built a software and suddenly everyone loved it, and now there's 6 million users.
we have a few champions of that, a few proponents in the UK. I mean, obviously, Eben Upton, he's the Raspberry Pi guy. He's a Welshman. He developed a single board computer for kids to use in an educational context. And he's done an enormous amount. And I compare him to Anita Roddick. I don't know if you remember her. She was the founder of The Body Shop, who ultimately, I think, was a very positive figure in the kind of ecology movement of civic responsibility, corporate responsibility, and so on. We need this in tech desperately, because all of these, Microsoft, Google, these are scurrilous, villainous companies.
Right. There's that rumour, right? So the biggest cybersecurity team on the planet live at Microsoft. There's something like 37,000 engineers. But at the same time, the biggest system ever with the biggest holes in it is Microsoft. So are they going to solve the problem and then fire 37,000 engineers, or are they going to perpetuate the problem because those 37,000 engineers quite like their jobs? So this is where are we going to solve problems if someone's making money out of it or someone's got a job from it? Probably not. And what does it look like? So this is the free, so we use free software. Everything that we do, all of our editing, all of our audio work, all of our documentation for our two companies, all for free. We do not use 365. And when I said that in front of the bank manager, that we've got an end-to-end encrypted replacement for Office 365, he nearly fell off his chair backwards because he's wanting that. He's wanted that for a long time. And then I could hear him listening to our conversation. I was talking to a coder and said, well, it's open source software. Anyone can do it. He was like, whoa. Right, let me get this down. He's been paying thousands, and probably millions a year for software that's causing him problems when he could have just got this for free.
Information, so access to information about things like this is a huge issue. Many of the solutions to the problems that we have are just right out there in the open. This is not a desperate, awful time. You know, there's a clear path out of this. It's right there in front of our eyes. Free software movement has been running for 30 years. Founded by a chap called Richard Stallman in America. He was an MIT computer science professor, often viciously attacked and as a person because his ideas are a grave threat to the status quo. But he's one man There is an enormous movement, an international global movement of tens or hundreds of thousands of developers in South America, in Russia, in China, in Britain, all over Europe, in North America and Canada, who write software and do this for the people. They develop code, they write applications for us to use as alternatives to what the big proprietary corporate providers give. What happens to it? Well, these big companies take that code, rebrand it as their own, and sell it under a restricted license.
And what you find as well is that there aren't actually that many software flaws in this, because you can actually have a conversation with that one designer and you can go, oh, have you noticed this bug? It's not a big company that don't want to answer the phone or are worried that you're going to charge them 20 grand. They'll fix it that day if they find it. So you find that a lot of this is, and hackers love this stuff, it's free, they don't want to pay for stuff, so they'll support it. They won't hack it because they use it. Right? Same in Linux, they all use Linux. That's why you'll find there aren't no bugs in it, because if they get a bug in their computer, some other hacker they know is going to ruin them. So they don't develop them, right?
You might be kind of hearing the word hacker and hearing a negative word. Now, we're hackers, but we work for the good guys, right? We're ethical. We work for the good guys, right? It's like a soldier. You know, we don't look at a soldier and you say, well, that's a bad soldier. It's contextual, right? Yeah. Whose side are we murdering for? Now, hopefully, we hope we're working for the good guys. Anyway, a lot of this is very political. We can't help it be. It became political when we, as a species, decided to correct me. What you said earlier was amazing. That it actually, I'm wrong.
Technology is part of our human evolution.
Yeah.
So we'd essentially still be living in caves if we'd not invented the needle or the wheel. What separates us from animals is our technological advancement. But at the moment, that technological advancement isn't in the hands of us. I can't just go and invent the wheel because Google would stop me. It's been killed by Google, they'll buy that and then they'll invent the wheel, right? They'll put their name on it. This is what we're finding now with technology. There's huge sites, killed by Google, we should have brought it up actually.
Oh, so I like that idea that technology is not what we use, but it's what we are.
Yeah.
And so it belongs to all of us and it's an inalienable component of our being.
Yeah.
So you just said that a big company will buy up technology which affects its profits.
Yeah.
So you have to sell something.
No, they buy out the company and they give them little choice. So they'll go to these two people who own this proprietary software and they'll say, we are so big that we can stop you getting VC money, we can stop you getting bank money, or you sell us the company for 3 million, way more than it's worth, and you can go on your merry way and start again. And they will do that, because if not, their life will be made impossible. VC money is vendor capital, and venture capital, sorry. You only get that, so it's where businessmen and big companies support you, and it's how you start your company. It's how most companies will fund themselves. And that can be withdrawn at any moment. Or the bank can decide not to lend to you.
Well, it's hard to get a bank loan in a speculative market. We're a very high risk market, so venture capitalists are people who will take big risks, but they're backed by huge amounts of money.
Yeah. Dragon's Den is a good example of that.
Kind of
right.
thing, yeah. Okay. I mean, these are clear objectives. I mean, they hardly need stating, but increase the technological power and rights of citizens while decreasing the powers and rights of corporations and governments. In other words, to resituate digital technology back with people. And that's something that's very, very doable, because that's where we've been, that's where we came from, and we've actually only recently lost that. So I'll take this one because it's economics. There's Adam Smith with his invisible hands. You can't see them. It's not a market because of this anomaly around demand. That there is no demand. People to research in this are Edward Bernays, Walter Lippmann, Noam Chomsky. They're all written voluminously on the manufacture of demand, public opinion, and the way that marketing works. And that's quite complex, but we create a fantasy. It's like ideas lead reality. So we create fantasies and we present them to people even when they don't yet exist. And when the engineers catch up with them, we've already been primed to accept certain technologies. So those technologies become an apparent demand, but they're really being pushed according to an agenda. And very often, technology is quite aggressively foisted upon people. And again, like here are these things that you hear, you'll be excluded, left behind, or you won't be competitive
Or
anymore.
that it's forced on them as well. So that's another issue, is that, you know, my grandma, I mentioned it, she's 90, and she can't do all the things that she used to do. She can't cope anymore. She doesn't have the mental capacity to go online. So she'll go up and say, oh, how do I do that? Oh, you've got to go online and book that appointment for your eyes now. Well, I'm blind. How can I go on? Oh, you can get help with that. Yeah, but then I've got to speak to someone on the phone for 20 minutes. I just want to book an appointment here. Oh, no, you can't do that. You got to go use a computer. And she's got to an age where she doesn't even want to turn it on anymore because she's afraid of it, and no one will help her to solve that situation.
My mum worked for IBM in the 60s. I've seen photos of her with the boots and the beehive, and she was like basically like the cool kids that all worked for Google in the 60s before she had me and my sister. Now she's exasperated. She can't believe that what she says, the failure that technology has become. And I say, I'm really sorry I disappointed you, Mum, by being a computer scientist, but we tried our best, you know, we really did. But what we're up against is not technical problems. These are political problems. These are human psychology problems about control. So I'll just read that last one. People are afraid of expressing their wishes around tech, and we're made to feel that we must accept what's given, you know. That's a sad thing. So I think that since, as you say, technology is part of what we are, technology is also an expression of, it is democracy, it's an expression of our wishes, right? So things that we can do, we must lobby and pester, educate MPs.
I've been doing that this week, right, with my local one. She unfortunately sent me a letter saying we'd like to hear your problems. Doesn't seem very keen to talk about cybersecurity. I feel like it's a little bit too up there, but we'll get there. I'm going to start knocking on the door soon. Hello, it's me again.
Contribute, cybersecurity is a political problem. Be selfish. I like this George Bernard Shaw quote. The reasonable person adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to them. Therefore, all progress depends upon the unreasonable person. Be unreasonable. Get out there and be as unreasonable as you can. What we're after is digital sovereignty, knowledge. Who knows that their smart TV has a hidden camera and microphone?
This is what I said about the blurring of your work. If you work from home and you're not aware that if you've bought a TV in about the last 5 years, it has a microphone in it, and you're going to go home and you're going to find that microphone now. So when you look at your TV, it has to have a hole in it to have the microphone. So any new TV will have it in. And I found mine, and it's right on the back underneath, and there's this little hole hidden around the side, and if you look inside with a torch, because you'll need to, there's an actual little microphone sticking in there. And it says it's for voice recognition, but what most people don't realise is also in the bottom or the top, there's a camera that watches you in your bedroom. Sometimes while it's off and it's on standby, it will be recording you. Where does that go? Well, it goes to Bush or it goes to Sharp. Where are those companies based? Not here. They are based in Asia. So when our government says, hey, I've got a bunch of people who are doing a national security job and I didn't realise that you had a camera and a microphone in their front room while they were on that call. What data have you got? And they go, oh, it's telemetry. Well, can we have it? Oh, I can't find it. Don't know where it is. It's on a system somewhere. I'll get that. I'll get it later. I'll tell you what. You send a court order to me in Vietnam, and we'll see if we get it. So, no, it's never going to get resolved.
Most people are just horrified when they find out that they've got a smart TV in their bedroom.
Yeah.
They're much more horrified when they find out they've got a smart TV in their bedroom when they work for GCHQ.
Yeah.
Or some other, handling sensitive information in some other capacity.
Are you saying that it's the camera is on when the thing's on standby, not if you switch it off?
If you switch off the wall, it shouldn't have power. But if you're leaving it on standby, just as with your phone, if you've signed an agreement that says they can activate it whenever your phone is switched on, it's still technically switched on.
Look, the thing that says it's on standby is just that the light changes
It's
from
still
green to
on.
red.
There's still network going. Yeah.
So, they're talking about vampire appliances and
Right.
using when something is on standby or
Yeah.
it's not switched on,
It's still on.
Yeah, because it's sending data across to China of all those conversations you had, and to Facebook, just in case you said you fancy a pizza and then your phone goes beep, would you like 20% off? That's where it's coming from.
even if you're,
Oh yeah.
you have turned it off at the wall.
Yeah, it's still, it can still hear. No, so if it's off at the wall, if it has no connection to power, it can't work. And that's the only thing you can see to remove it.
Jolly good reason for turning off the vampire appliance.
It is. But the thing is that you don't, it used to be that I could go and pick, and we could go and pick them. If your TV broke up, I could go and find which cameras, which models have those cameras in and which models have mics in. They all have them in now.
And you've really no idea what's going on in that software. And also, not only is it difficult to reverse engineer technically, but it may be illegal to do so. So in America, the manufacturers have bought laws. I'll express it that way because that's what they've done. They bought the laws, Digital Millennium Copyright Act and so on, which makes it a criminal offence to reverse engineer a device which has got protective measures to stop you from reverse engineering it, and they all have. So not only is it very difficult to find out what your device is doing, but you're legally prohibited from trying to do so.
Could
They
you
own
put
it.
some intermediary device in between? To
You
find
can
out
do
where
it,
it's
so-
sending
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Depends. So I've got a Roku device that does it on an encrypted channel. I can't peer into that at all. It's completely encrypted.
into the kernel.
I can. But eventually, I'd imagine that it's a VPN. It's going to be difficult to see what they're doing on their end.
funneled out, yeah.
I can see what they're receiving, but I'm not going to be able to see, well, without breaking a lot of laws.
But often it's the metadata, it's the fact that you can see that it is doing something, which is enough to raise suspicions. I mean, what else would it be doing, right?
My mum is not being silly when she actually has her camera phone covered with.
No, that's perfect. She's very good.
Yeah.
The first thing, I literally had to buy a new TV this week, and I was like, where are you? And I literally sent him a photo, and I've put blue tack in a hole. And that's all it takes. You find that hole, you put blue tack in it, it can't hear a thing. Now you're secure. And that little protest, if we all did that, they'd stop doing it. They'd stop wasting their money, wouldn't they? And stop putting in those mics because they're not making anything from it. And this is what we mean about taking back control. And educate yourself to know what's going on and then prevent it with a little bit of blue tack. Or just delete the app and use the browser.
So it would be simple enough to sort of cover the thing up like a parrot overnight. You can't take pictures of you.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah. Or just turn the TV off. That's the other way that I do it. I don't trust the TV in my bedroom, so it's like, don't turn that on. It's the same as when I go to an Airbnb. There might be cameras all over it. So what I do is I get changed, like I'm in a public swimming pool or something, and I go like this, just in case there's somebody watching me. And I goddamn hope that I have been caught one day. Because they're so small, those cameras in places like that, you can't see them either. But you just don't know where you're being watched anymore, but we do.
Surveillance. Do you want to talk about AI? Is that a subject that's of interest? Okay.
Create some very good pictures.
That's what everyone uses it for.
I asked it to produce a photograph of Windermere
Yeah.
with a red kite, top left. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, language to picture transcription, I mean, that's what transformers are designed for. It's absolutely, it's amazing the things that you can do with that. First of all, we've been able to do things like this for like 50 years, but just very, very slowly. So there's not been huge breakthroughs, there's incremental advances. My field of expertise is in digital signal processing. So I'm just going to give you a disclaimer.
He's been studying it as long as I am.
I've been researching and using AI since the late 1980s. I built things called Boltzmann machines, perceptrons, early neural networks back in the day.
That's an interesting point, actually, because people don't realise how old AI is. Because if you go to the British Museum and you go to the computing department, you'll notice that they were working on this in 1935. That's at the beginning of the war.
And Norbert Weiner and cybernetics is kind of the kind of foundation of that. Yeah.
It's always struck me that like the proliferation of AI now is just a rebranding of what we've had for quite a long time. It's just been locked together under this new.
Yeah, the compute power increased.
It's a very good way to frame it, actually. It's a rebranding, in fact, I've got a slide, and I'll come to that in a moment. So I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and I've got a bit of a perspective on it. A lot of people talk about AI, and I don't think that they've got the technical background. I don't think they really know what they're talking about sometimes. One of the ways that I would say the best way to understand it as is not in the technical sense, is what is the objective socially and politically. First of all, it's always in the word. If you look at the word, if you apply the etymology, it tells you. Artificial, artifice, meaning to deceive. It's something that's fake, okay? And really, how I explain it to my 9-year-old child is AI is fake people. The movement is away from technology qua devices, computers, things like this, to representations of people with apparently having opinions, having knowledge, having feelings, and so on. So it's a way of reframing the whole of digital technology as fake people. in which we make attributions of human-like thought to machines. That is a fundamental sea change in how we see and use technology. Right? And it's a political rather than technological project, which we've kind of brought up a little bit.
Like I said, they didn't want to replace our jobs, but actually they do, because they just said that in a conference.
Why do this? Well, think about that question of secret laws, or the question of us not living in a society that's actually governed by reason, by
the algorithm.
The algorithm, the invisible, its decision making is opaque. So the hiding of unacceptable ideas and techniques so as to legitimize them. If you're told that the computer says no, if you're told that the algorithm's decided this or that, but you can't query it, there's no introspection, there's no way to unwind that stack and see how the decisions were made, you're really in a bit of a bind, right? Everybody is, including the manufacturer. So we have this info washing in which we can hide sources and their provenance.
A lot of AIs that are coming out are misogynistic because they were coded by men in America with some strange religious ideas, because those are the people who are running the technology. So if you find a new AI model come out of Salt Lake City, it's probably not so nice to women. How dare you drink alcohol or people racist. A lot of them are racist. There's a soap dispenser that only operates for white people. So
that's funny because it's so simple that it's just based on the reflected light. So, but the point stands because it's only ever been tested on white people, and they never had a black person test it in the lab. So then when they actually put them out, they don't work for black people. Right?
They didn't even think about the light reflection issue from the beginning.
Okay, so we're reframing the power of the tech industry due to its momentum. It can't be stopped. You know, there's so much invested in making these things. And we've reached saturation. We've reached the limits of utility in many areas of technology. There's not much more that we want from them. When you break down applications, the world of computing and programs, it's a bit like drama, how Shakespeare understood drama. There's a limited set of human stories, right? And they're all basically reuses of the same thing. There's a limited number of applications. Like there's the text editor. There's the communications device that can send a message from one place to another. You know, there's a very small number of apps, and everything else you see, databases, spreadsheets, etc., are just reincarnations and iterations on these same things. And we long ago ran out of need for anything more complex. All we're doing is building more and more complex combinations of them. So what the technology industry has to do is to keep reinventing itself. That's what capitalism does. That's what fashion does. What's what David Bowie and Madonna do. They're infinitely chameleon, Corinthian and caricature. So don't be surprised that the tech industry does the same thing. But once you know the trick, right, once you've seen the trick, it's the same thing as yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Maybe you won't be so keen to realise that if I don't buy into this right now, I'll be left behind and miss out and not competitive and so on.
We're already seeing downsides to this use in offices, that people who are heavily using AI, young people. So I mark exam papers, and I tell you now, when they panic, they don't think. A lot of the young people now are just AI it. And that worries me, because they are told that there's no exam in this whole country where you can use AI. So why on earth is it overridden in that moment of panic and they think, I'll just ask the AI? If we get in that state, we're never ever going to be able to progress. The state of humankind that we are now will only decrease, but we're not going to be critically thinking. We're not going to be able to just solve our own problems. We're going to be completely reliant on the machine. If the machine goes down, we're all going to be praying to the dark box, not knowing how to fix it.
Cargo cult. There's a terrifying cul-de-sac looming. It's funny, but it's also really terrifying in terms of knowledge and knowledge engineering, education, and how the human race replicates itself. The tradition of about 12 millennia is being overturned right now, in that people will no longer have the ability to educate the next generation, and the next generation won't care because they'll just have convenience and utility. So we're going to run into a cul-de-sac. There's something even more scary, in my opinion, which is that a lot of this is a quasi-religious project. It is not guided by humanistic reason. It's not an enlightenment positivist project at all, even though it's dressed up as one. It is pure religious ideology. And the connection there, which Charlie Brooker and Stuart Lee, the comedian, many people have explored, is this post-humanism thing, which is where it actually comes from the Russian Orthodox, the cosmists, and these people really believe that we're going to all be sort of, everything's a simulation and we're all going to be uploaded into the cloud at some point, which is a kind of ascension myth, right? And they're deadly serious. They're as serious as the people that believe in the rapture, the far right in America. And I would say that they're rather dangerous people.
They just don't want to die. Yeah, but they just don't want to die. That's it. They'd rather live with a fake little robot of mum in the corner who doesn't sound anything like mum than have mum. And that's a bit weird. That worries me. And a lot of it is, well, we want to live forever. But actually, we don't know. We're creating AI and they're not conscious. We don't even know if they'll ever be conscious. We don't know that if you can even upload a biological consciousness to a machine. That may not be possible, but they're going to try it and they'll destroy the world to do so if necessary because of their own fear of
Penrose
death.
doesn't think so. I mean,
I don't think so either.
I don't think so.
We do quantum mechanics. We don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. Another nasty aspect is it's always framed as an arms race. If you listen to the language around this, and Putin said it, you know, whoever masters AI first will conquer the world. What a wonderful new mythology to kind of get behind for the last final death march of humanity, right? No one wins in arms races. No one ever wins arms races. Right? All that happens is you squander all your economy, all of your industry, all of your human value goes into a project which you hope you will never use. And it makes you stupid. You know, it's de-education. I think that we're going to quickly realise that. I mean, if you work in academia now, if you're at universities, they are terrified of what's happening with AI. And no one. I've written quite a lot for the Times Higher, several articles on while I've been working in universities, watching what has happened to the standard of education and how people relate to knowledge. It is falling apart. The professors don't know what to do. The students don't know what to do because they're trapped in this competition to succeed at all costs.
We had a student who was exemplary, didn't we? She was fantastic.
Yeah.
And her work, before AI came out, we'd read it, we'd marked it, it was one of the best. It turns out that she's so good at writing that the AI essentially copied her. And now all of the work that she handed in the last year, that's AI. The machine was assuming that she was AI because her work is that good. So you can now be accused of plagiarism because you are better than the AI. That's not okay. That's not all right. That's a good thing. You should be rewarded, not penalised for it.
I mean, as we know, it's ill-defined, vague and unconvincing propaganda and spin and hype around AI. I think it's going to take us a long time to unpick it and figure out what we're really dealing with. When is it just classic signal processing? When is it procedural? When is it a neural network that can't be introspected? And we start doing things like basing laws on it, sending people to prison based on it, cutting their benefits based on it, making healthcare decisions based on it. I mean, we are sunk. And no matter how much the politicians tell you that this is a glorious new era, that is just hope. That's what they hope. And I hope with them, right? But they need proper, educated, courageous engineers and people to talk about the reality of this.
Yeah, but the proper reality, because I was watching a podcast a few weeks ago where they were talking about AI, it's going to take over the world. And they keep saying things like, it's making these decisions, it's thinking this. AI doesn't have the ability to really make a decision or think. It thinks and makes decisions based on the code that was written, which is based on the original design written by that person. The coder made the decision. Exactly. So it can't think or feel. When AI misbehaves, it's the coder and it's the person who coded it that's misbehaved.
How about AI as a tool? One of the computer group uses it, and he's learning how to develop in JavaScript.
That's what you want AI to be used for, a tool. But you know what? We already have those tools. This is what, conversation I have with students. They go, can I just use the AI as a tool? And I go, yeah, but a Google search is quicker. They go, what do you mean? I go, well, Google search will teach you how to find the answers yourself. Whereas if you ask AI, it is essentially just doing the reading from several sites for you. It's condensing, it's a note taking, it's a quick answer. But what you're missing out is all the other little bits of the question that you didn't know. You've asked one question, but actually you've asked 8, but you don't know it yet. Yeah. You need to go and Google it and find out the other 8 questions, and then you'll find your answer. And again, these large language models have begun to fall apart just this week because how did they build them? Well, they stole all our data for the last 15, 20 years, right? They've been taking everything we do online, and that's what they used to build these designs with. However, once you've built them and we start using them, there's no new data going into them, which means they start to collapse because they start to repeat themselves.
Well, they're ingesting themselves now, and that's very dangerous. I don't know if you remember bovine spongiform encephalitis, which was the mad cow disease, which began when we took the rendered down bones from cattle and fed them back as cattle feed. In the biological system there, you've got a positive feedback loop, and positive feedback loops are very dangerous because they can be selective filters for undesirable elements, let's say. In that case, it was prions, which are not kind of killed in the process. The same happens in the digital domain, is that you take information and you feed it back into itself, and what it will do is it will amplify line spectrum elements which you don't see until they're already catastrophically dangerous. Talk for such a long time, it'd be great to kind of turn it over to questions.
Just going back to something you were saying at the very beginning, and just something being made aware of, is so RISC-V architectures out there as a disruptor to ARM and Intel's dominance, essentially the software that's built around that. Just wondered what your thoughts about sort of a democratized chipset architecture would be to.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah. So this is a hardware question, and it's about where do the physical goods that we use come from and what comprises them. So there are many brands of microprocessor. Once upon a time, there were hundreds of companies that made microprocessors. They've boiled down to probably a handful of dominant producers. There's the Acorn, the RISC ARM processors, which were invented here in Britain, in Cambridge by the Acorn company. That's one of the dominant processors in phones. Intel, which is the US company that make most of the powerful processors that run PCs and laptops.
AMD overtook them, and now they're in the
They've
trouble.
had a bit of a fall recently. And there's a new architecture on the horizon, which is RISC, Reduced Instruction Set Computing, version 5, RISC-V, which and this is all about intellectual property. It's all about who owns designs and licenses these designs for production around the world. RISC-V is the only architecture which is completely open in that we can see what goes into making the chip. We can scrutinize it, and this is very important about transparency. If you cannot examine something, you have no effective security. If it's opaque and you can only take on trust that it works the way that somebody told you that it works, that is no kind of security at all, right? So RISC-V is and open hardware is one of the fundamentally important pieces of the jigsaw puzzle for civic cybersecurity. We have to know that the hardware on which our software is running does what we think it does. I would say it's in the top 5 most important subjects, yeah.
And on that, in terms of civic cybersecurity as well, people will surprise me still that they'll go on and they'll buy laptop or a USB stick that only costs £1. If you do that, it does come with viruses. If it is too good to be true, there is a reason for it. It's because they invested early on, so they don't want them to shut down. Or they're a little bit techno-fascist and they quite like the idea of controlling all us working class assholes by making us sit and do what the machine says, which of course they've paid to be programmed in their image. So in order to retain our freedom and our autonomy, the fact that we can't even buy artwork that's not controlled by an algorithm anymore should upset every single person in the world, but we don't know about it. So we need to keep talking about these things, and we need to be proactive about these things and reject the technology and pick up the pen and paper again if we need to.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.